When Jenny disappeared, nobody believed me. Not at first. People go missing all the time, they said. It's probably nothing. They told me to wait it out, to give it a few days, but I knew from the start that something was wrong. Very wrong. She wouldn't just disappear like that. Jenny and I had been best friends since college. We were inseparable. Even after graduation, after jobs took us to different cities, we always stayed in touch, weekend calls, visits whenever we could manage. It's that kind of friendship. You don't just lose contact with someone like that. It doesn't just happen out of the blue. It was a Thursday when I last spoke to her. She called me during her lunch break. Her voice was bright and familiar. We chatted about the usual things: her work, my latest relationship disaster, some Netflix show we were both obsessing over. She'd mentioned in passing that she'd been feeling a bit off lately. Though, tired all the time, she'd said. I brushed it off, telling her she was probably just overworked. I wish I'd listened more carefully. The following Saturday, I texted her asking if she wanted to catch up over the phone that evening. No response. I didn't think much of it at first. Maybe she was busy. People have lives, right? By Sunday morning, I still hadn't heard from her, so I called. It went straight to voicemail. The same thing happened again on Monday. By Tuesday, my stomach had started to knot. This wasn't like her. I tried calling her a few more times, but every call went unanswered. Every text unread. It wasn't like Jenny to just ghost someone, especially not me. She wasn't the type to disappear without a word. By Wednesday, I was worried. I knew I had to do something. The first thing I did was call her parents. They lived in another state and hadn't heard from her either. I'm sure she's fine, her mom said, though I could hear the worry in her voice. She's probably just busy with work. I could tell she didn't believe that any more than I did. I called her office next, but when I asked about her, the receptionist's response sent a chill down my spine. Jenny hasn't been in all week, she said. We thought she might be sick or on vacation. Didn't she tell you? I hung up the phone and stared at the screen, my mind racing. Something was wrong. I could feel it in my bones. That afternoon, I drove to her apartment. It wasn't too far, maybe a 2-hour drive, but the trip felt longer, every mile dragging on as my anxiety built. When I finally arrived at her building, my hands were shaking as I parked the car. I buzzed her apartment. Nothing. I buzzed again. Still nothing. I tried calling her one more time, standing right there in the lobby, hoping that somehow, magically, she'd pick up. But again, her phone went straight to voicemail. I stood there, feeling helpless and more than a little terrified. What the hell was going on? I knew I needed to get inside. I couldn't just stand there and do nothing. I wasn't going to wait for days while something terrible could be happening. Her apartment was on the 3rd floor, so I took the stairs 2 at a time and knocked on her door. Jenny! My voice echoed in the empty hallway. Jenny, it's me. Are you in there? No answer. I knocked again, harder this time. The silence was deafening. I don't know what possessed me to try the handle, but when I did, to my surprise, it turned. The door wasn't locked. My heart pounded as I slowly pushed it open. The creak of the hinges was loud in the stillness of the apartment. The first thing that hit me was the smell. Stale, like the place hadn't been aired out in days. There was something else too, a faint metallic scent that I couldn't quite place. Jenny? I called out again, stepping inside. The apartment was eerily quiet, too quiet. The kind of quiet that makes your skin prickle. Everything looked normal. The TV remote was on the couch, her shoes by the door, a half-empty mug of coffee on the kitchen counter. It was like she'd just stepped out for a minute and would be back any second. But she wasn't. I walked through the small living room, my eyes scanning the space. Nothing seemed out of place, but that didn't make me feel any better. If anything, it made me feel worse. There was no sign of a struggle, no indication that anything violent had happened. But that also meant there were no clues, nothing to explain where she had gone. Her phone wasn't on the counter or the coffee table. I searched the kitchen, the bedroom, even the bathroom. Nothing. It was like she just vanished. A gnawing sense of dread settled in my gut. I knew I should call the police, but what would I even tell them? That my friend wasn't answering her phone? That her apartment was unlocked and she wasn't there? It didn't feel like enough. It didn't feel urgent enough, even though everything in my body screamed that it was. I left the apartment feeling more anxious than when I'd arrived. As I drove home, my mind raced, trying to make sense of everything. Where could she have gone? Had someone taken her? Was she hurt? The questions swirled around in my head, but there were no answers, just silence. That night, I barely slept. I kept waking up, my heart pounding, thinking I'd heard my phone buzz or vibrate, but every time I checked, there was nothing. No calls, no texts, just that same maddening silence. By morning, I couldn't take it anymore. I called the police. Filing a missing person report was a surreal experience. The officer on the phone asked all the standard questions. When was the last time you saw her? Has she done this before? Any history of mental health issues? I answered everything as best I could, but I could tell they didn't think it was serious. She's an adult, the officer said, his tone flat. People go off the grid sometimes. They need a break from life. But this wasn't Jenny. She wouldn't just go off the grid. Still, they promised to send someone to check out her apartment to follow up on the report, but I could tell it wasn't a priority. They didn't know her like I did. Days passed, then a week, and still no word, no leads, no sightings. It was like she had never existed. Her family was distraught. I was too. I kept calling her, leaving voicemails, sending texts, even though I knew they wouldn't be read. It was like screaming into the void. Then, one night, almost 2 weeks after Jenny disappeared, I got a text. It was from her number. My heart nearly stopped. I stared at the screen, my fingers trembling before finally opening the message. I'm okay. Don't look for me. That was it. No explanation, no details. Just those 2 sentences. My stomach twisted. Something was wrong. This didn't feel like Jenny. She wouldn't send a message like that. I tried calling her immediately, but once again, it went straight to voicemail. I texted her back, frantically typing out a dozen messages, begging her to call me, to let me know what was going on. But there was no response. Nothing. I went back to the police, showing them the text, but they brushed it off. See, they said, she's fine. She doesn't want to be found. But that wasn't true. I knew it wasn't true. I couldn't shake the feeling that something terrible had happened to her, that someone had sent that message from her phone, someone who wanted me to stop looking. I started losing sleep. My nights were plagued with nightmares. Images of Jenny trapped somewhere, scared, trying to reach out to me. I couldn't shake the feeling that I was missing something, that there was a clue I hadn't seen, a piece of the puzzle that would explain everything. I went back to her apartment. I don't know what I was hoping to find. Maybe I thought if I looked hard enough, I'd notice something the police hadn't. The moment I stepped inside, that strange smell hit me again, stronger this time. The metallic scent hung heavy in the air, almost choking me. I wandered through the apartment, my eyes scanning every surface, every corner. That's when I noticed it. A faint, dark stain on the living room carpet. Small, almost unnoticeable. But once I saw it, I couldn't look away. It was blood. Panic surged through me. I dropped to my knees, my heart racing, my fingers trembling as I touched the stain. It was dry, but unmistakable. Something had happened here. Something bad. I ran out of the apartment, my breath coming in shallow gasps. I called the police again, demanding they come back, demanding they do more. When they arrived, I pointed out the stain. The officer took one look inside. It could be anything, he said. Probably wine or coffee, but I knew what I had seen. They didn't take me seriously. They never did. But that night, something changed. I got another text. This time, it wasn't from Jenny's number. It was from an unknown number. I told you not to look. My blood ran cold. I didn't sleep that night, and the texts kept coming. Every few days, a new message. Cryptic, threatening, always from a different number, always telling me to stop. But I couldn't. I haven't heard from Jenny in months now. The police have closed the case. They said she probably just wanted to disappear, to start a new life. But I know better. Someone took her, and they're watching me.